Assalamu alaikum, this is Dr. Moeed Pirzada. You might remember that the government of Prime Minister Imran Khan had brought up a new national security policy that was contingent on geoeconomics, on economic security. But now many people in Pakistan fear that Pakistan might have to join another IMF program after the end of this current program in September 2022. How is it going to affect Pakistan's national security policy, the new principles it has evolved of economic independence? If Pakistan has to join the IMF program once again, I have invited the economist Noaman Majeed to help me explain. Noaman has written extensively on the subject for Global Village Space and also for the other media. He has appeared on television channels in the discussion. Noaman, thank you so much for joining me. How credible is this fear or information that Pakistan might have to join another IMF program in September 2022?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thank you, Dr. Saab. You see, if you look at the national security policy, the core doctrine or the central principle of that is economic security. And it was tweeted, it was said that the national security cannot be ensured unless we ensure our economic security. So one part is taken care of that unless, what is national security basically? It's about the long-term economic planning and project management for the critical sectors of the economy on which our economic survival depends. And unless we ensure those things, we cannot claim to be a independent and sovereign nation, because economic security leads to your economic sovereignty, and economic sovereignty leads to national sovereignty. So one thing is taken care of. Now, if you look at the IMF and the kind of pressure that we have got from IMF in terms of legislation, whether it comes to State Bank of Pakistan or a state-owned enterprise or fiscal management or increasing the taxes or whatever, so the question arises that, again, do we have to go to the IMF, or will they be dictating our economic policies again in the near future as well? My answer would be, if you look at this, is the 22nd IMF program that Pakistan is in. You see, and if you look at the history of Pakistan and IMF over a period of last 20-25 years, then the economic fundamentals due to which Pakistan had to go to IMF, they have not changed. Like, for example, the same current account deficit, same high government borrowing, same inefficient state-owned enterprises, no fiscal and monetary and balance of payment restructuring, the same things. So my answer would be that if the economic fundamentals remain the same, if our economic planning processes, our economic management remain the same, it will not be only a one more program, it might be 10 more programs. So the only way we can avoid going to IMF or going to any other multilateral institution for rescuing us as a lender of last resort and to ensure that our currency does not keep plummeting all the time, then basically we need to change the way we are going to manage our economy in the short, medium, and long run.
But Noman, this is a very generalized, broad-based kind of take on the subject. My question is that people fear that Pakistan has suffered a lot in terms of, the Pakistani people have suffered a lot in terms of economic hardship in the last 3.5 years of this 3 years of this IMF program. So now we were told that we are recovering. We have managed a current account deficit, we have increased our exports, we have controlled our imports, and we have started to grow. We have allowed the dollar to free float, and the dollar is almost 180, $1 to a rupee. So despite all this, do you fear, is this your assessment, that in September, October of 2022, Pakistan will have to take another extended fund facility program?
You see, if you look at the volatility in the global economy, it is unprecedented. If you look at when the economy was inherited by the current Pakistani regime, the Imran Khan government, the economy was in pretty bad shape, and the dollar had started going down during the transition government, the caretaker government. So that's why, and afterwards you have these very high energy prices, logistic issues, the corona and everything. So the economic challenges are unprecedented. Some of the economic fundamentals have definitely improved. For example, the IT exports have gone up, your regular exports have gone up, the remittances have gone up. But on the other hand, especially due to the commodity prices and the energy shortages which are being faced by the global markets, all the countries in the international markets, I think if we do not take some certain drastic measures, for example, very heavy slashing of imports, cutting off all non-essential imports, there's a combination of measures which can be taken, then I fear that we might have to go to another IMF program if the fundamentals remain the same. And I think that the fundamentals are going to remain the
You
same.
mentioned that we have to take some measures like slashing the imports, but you'll remember that in 2018 and in 2019, especially after joining the IMF program, the Imran Khan government, the PTI government, basically put brakes on the imports, and it was taking credit for the fact that it has stopped the current account deficit bleeding. But then the industrialists and the businessmen that appeared in the TV programs or the media, they told us that Pakistan's growth and Pakistan's economy was also import driven, and slashing the imports affects and hurts the economy. Now you say we have to take measures to stop the imports, and now once again the imports have crossed are anywhere between $50 billion to $60 billion here. So how is it possible to stop the imports?
You see, it's not only about stopping the import, it's about curtailing the non-essential imports. For example, Pakistan's current account deficit is around $18 billion. So it's not about, you cannot just wipe out all the current account deficit in 1 year. Basically, it's $8 to $10 billion or around 50% of that current account deficit that needs to be brought down. And it's a combination of measures which you need to take, which will be like, for example, some of the non-essential imports need to be brought down. The IT export need to go up further. For example, India's IT exports, as we all know are $150 billion. Ours are reaching hardly $2 billion this year. So there's a tremendous scope. If we put some measures on war footing, if we identify the very focused areas, for example, in which the Indians are exporting their services, then easily our IT exports can go up by $1 billion or $2 billion in near term. Similarly, our foreign direct investment, which is at $1.5 billion approximately. If you look at, for example, again, India, it's $50 billion, Vietnam gets $16 billion, even Cambodia gets $4.5 billion. So there's a tremendous upscaling which is possible, and I feel that in short to medium term we can go up to $3 to $5 billion in terms of FDI. So for example, it's not only about curtailing the imports, yes, need to be curtailed, non-essential, but I think they're a bit late in the game. For example, like we $300 million or so we imported the luxury vehicles. So these, some of the import control measures must have been taken like a couple of years ago, so that we would have been reaping the benefits by now. They were not done earlier at that time. So now we are facing the issue. So I think it's a combination
Noaman,
of.
it's only a few months ago that the government had claimed that it had brought they will always blame Ishaq Dar for raising the current account deficit to 19 or $20 billion, I'm sure you must have heard that it was almost $2 billion a month. And then this government had been taking credit and claiming that we have brought the current account deficit to $6-7 billion a year. But now you just mentioned the figure of $18 billion. How has it happened?
The dynamics have changed. During the Ishaq Dar era, the oil was at around $40, $30, $40, $50 range. Now the oil has reached $90 thing. So basically, if the oil comes down to the same level, the dynamics are going to be the same. Basically, the current account deficit, as State Bank has said in their report, that the 70% of the current account deficit is due to the price element, the price surge. So far as the current account part is concerned, yes, due to the increase in energy prices and increase in basically, I would say your logistic prices. And one more thing which we need to remember is that cotton crop is down significantly. So half of the cotton that we need for the country's requirements to make adequate exports is being imported right now. Our requirements are around 16 million tons, and we are producing, I think, around 8 million bales or something like that. So that's also hurting the economy. So that's why I said it's only one measure. It's a combination of different measures. If we take, what is basically what need to be done. We cannot simply go into a current account surplus overnight. First of all, what we need to do, that we don't have to go to IMF as a measure of last resort. There are international markets where we can borrow from.
But this government tried. After coming into power in August 2018, they went post to pillar. They went to China, they went to Arab world, they went to Middle East, they went to Saudi Arabia, they went to UAE, they went to Qatar. They didn't get money from anywhere.
Because that they went to these countries when the situation was going for the lender of the last resort, what you call in the banking terminology. That happens when you're about to go bankrupt, the reserves are going down. In that situation, if you go to any of these countries or financial markets, nobody is going to lend you the money. On the other hand, if you manage it properly right now, for example, if our current account deficit is in the range of around $8 to $10 billion, the international markets would be comfortable that, okay, the country is in decent enough financial position to make good on its financial payments. But if the current account deficit, for example, is in the range of $20 billion plus, everybody knows that unless IMF intervenes, you get some emergency money, you will not be able to make good on your payments. So the situation is different. That's why in the short term, we cannot just convert a current account deficit into current account surplus. What we need to do.
So, Noaman, what is the way forward for Pakistani economy then?
What I feel the lacking in Pakistani economy and the economic planning has been from the perspective of economic security. What is economic security actually? Economic security is not just about making a policy statement, it's about project management. You identify 50 to 100 projects which are vital for the survival of the country's economy, and you make sure that despite the change in the government, whether whoever changes in the government, these projects go through. For example, at one point in time, we had the nuclear bomb program. That was considered to be vital for our survival. Now Pakistan has reached a stage, our economy is in such a position that if we do not make, for example, things like food security and the energy security, we identify which are the things which are so much essential. For example, the yield management. The yield of Pakistani crops is one of the lowest in the world. What needs to be done? We need to make sure that, despite the fact that half of our country, as claimed by the Prime Minister Imran Khan, they have issues with the malnutrition. For example, just imagine Pakistani economy grows and the people who are in the malnutrition category, they go up the economic ladder and they need more food. So we will not have enough food in the country to feed these people. So what needs to be done? For example, we need to increase our yield curve. We need to make sure that our yields are the crops, whether we grow wheat or rice or whatever, they are in line with some of the best international practices in the countries which are growing the most food. These are the kind of measures. For example, edible oil. Why can't we grow the edible oil seed in Pakistan? So Pakistani economy, I believe, has reached a stage that there are no immediate overnight short-term measures. There are certain things which need to be done. Yes, there can be some medium-term measures, for example, which can yield results in 1 to 3 years. As I said, education is one of the lacking area. I just mentioned earlier as well that Pakistan...
What is the meaning of education? I think that perhaps the skill development and learning new skills at an early age is more important than taking master's programs and doing PhDs.
Yeah, when I say education does not mean full 4-year or 6-year master's program. You identify which technologies, which knowledge-based skills are needed in the global economy for the advanced manufacturing. First of all, there are two parts of the discussion. One is that we generally educate our population, and the second part is...
But there has to be a basic school education.
Yeah, the basic school education has to be there. But again, what we need to understand is the tertiary education rate in Pakistan is one of the lowest, and the quality is one of the lowest in the world as well. So people at least who are getting their basic education, when they go up the ladder, they should have access to the quality education in terms of skill development. For example, the global market needs a lot of nurses. So do we have adequate nursing institutions in the country? The global markets need a lot of people in the AI, in data science, and all these areas. Are we producing enough people which are compatible with the global standards? For example, the national security policy, as you mentioned earlier, also mentioned about the global human resource. Global human resource means a human resource which is compatible with the requirements of 2022. So are we producing enough people? No. But for example, in the age, what we call MOOCs, massive open online courses programs, what do we need to do? We need to rely on the international education platforms, the likes of EDX and Coursera, so that we can train our students, our youngsters in the technologies, in the programs that are compatible, that are needed by the international markets. So what will happen that before going...
So are you suggesting that, for instance, about 12 to 14% of the UAE workforce is of Pakistani origin?
Yeah.
There is also expats that send the major source of the remittances to Pakistan, and almost 28% of them are from India. So you mean that if Pakistan can send a better quality human resource to UAE and the Middle East, it will make a difference to Pakistani economy?
Not only UAE, look at Germany. The new German government has said they will be needing 400,000 people every year for next 3 years. The Canadians need almost 1 million. Now look at the countries who are benefiting most from that. What we need to do, we need to have a very focused program. We identify what skills are needed in the global market, and then we train our people accordingly. Now the problem...
So what are those skills?
If you go for the medical field, for example, the nursing is in global demand. You need a lot of nurses in the global markets. If you look at the technology, the AI and data science, what's happening globally. On one hand, there are a lot of unemployed people. On the other hand, there are jobs which are going unfulfilled because the demand is not being met. So AI, it's the Internet of Things, in the data sciences, there are a lot of such fields which require a lot of human resources. Even, for example, the mechanics and plumbers that you are producing, if you can just teach some basic English skills and enable them to go to the developed market, they can earn a lot of foreign exchange. As you rightly mentioned, from an economic security perspective, we also need to ensure that our remittances remain at a certain level. And in order to ensure the continued...
So as an economist, do you think that the previous Pakistani governments over the last 25 years have not really understood the importance of skill development?
Oh, absolutely not. The skill development, human resource development is the most underinvested area. And if you ask me, like several people ask me this, if we ask you one fundamental reason why Pakistan has gone down across the economic fields in any field of the society is the education. Our basic education, our secondary and our tertiary education is of very low quality. In terms of quantity and quality, both we are lacking. Unless we invest in our education, in the human resource development, there is no way we can ensure our economic security.
But do we really understand what is that we have to do to raise the quality of the education?
Well, I think that we haven't seen any focused planning that how do we need to raise the quantity and quality by the global levels. You can increase the rate of literacy, the literacy rate. There are a lot of measures. Somebody who can write his name can be considered a literate person. But to produce a globally compatible human resources, which is what we need. For example, as I said, the yield management. We are not producing enough agri-scientists, enough agri-experts who can go to different fields, who can advise our farmers how to manage their lands. These are the basic skills which are needed in the economy. If you look at the linguistic skills, we are not producing enough mathematicians. You go and see any universities, mathematics is one of the basic fundamental fields which eventually produce the computer scientists and all those. Are we producing enough mathematicians?
Just winding it up. So basically you think that we have reached that stage in our history or economic history that without really building up the capacity of the average Pakistani man and woman, we can't really find a solution. We have to build up the capacity and the skills.
Yeah, we have to build up the capacity with meticulous planning and focused planning. Okay, what are the areas that need to be focused? As I said, human resource development, even on the economy, for example, the food security, when we talk about the agri-security, the increasing the yield curve and all those sort of things. You see, unless we do a short, medium, long-term planning, which is uninterrupted in its implementation, because I keep repeating it again and again, that economic security and economic sovereignty is not about policy making. It's about project management. Project management is identifying the right projects and ensuring that these projects are implemented all throughout without any interruption. And that need the right institutional framework, the right governance framework, which the country needs. And I think the right institutional framework, we do not have enough institutions in the country with the right mandate, with the right skill set, and with the right governance structure who can ensure the proper project management of the projects which are vital for the economic security of the country.
So one last question. In the last 3.5 years in this government, we have heard a lot of discussion doing about the economic reform and reforming institutions and taking difficult decisions. You don't think we're still doing the long-term, midterm to long-term management planning?
Well, I can say that it is slightly better than earlier. It's not pure election-based. They have taken a lot of unpopular decisions, for example, in terms of import curtailing and all those sort of things. But keeping in view the extent of the problems that we have. For example, take the case of money laundering. Yes, a lot has been done due to FATF or whatever the money laundering. But there's a lot of unauthorized imports that are taking place in the country. You go to any market and see the markets are flooded with the imported. Yes, they have gone down substantially, but they are still there. If you just control those unauthorized imports, it will benefit your SMEs like anything. So I think a lot more tough decision. And again, it's not only about taking tough decisions, it's about taking focused decisions. You identify the area, you see what needs to be done in that area, and then you implement the thing. That implementation, uninterrupted, 3 to 5 years, you are there. In the key areas, energy, food, human resource, and then the country will survive. Okay, we might have to take one more IMF program, but we have to ensure it's not about from 22nd going to 23rd. What we have to ensure that from 22nd we don't go to 30th program. So even if we have to take IMF program for 1 or 2 or 3 years, we have to ensure after 3 years there has to be a certain mechanism and policy framework in place that after 2 to 3 years or 5 years we get rid of IMF for good.
Thank you, Noaman. Thank you so much.